am reading Graham Greene's The Comedians. The three comedians who met on a cargo ship bound for Puerto Rico were called Mr. Smith, a presidential candidate he once was, Mr. Jones, who calls himself Major Jones, and Mr. Brown, who tells this story. We are already now in chapter 4 of the third part of this book, not much left. Mr. Brown helped the escape of Mr. Jones, but they were caught. Anyhow, we're now continuing in chapter 4, Roman 1. I drove along many kilometers of wire fencing to find a gate Mr. Fernandez had procured for me in Santo Domingo, a small sports car at a cut rate, perhaps a too flippant car for my errand. I had a personal introduction from Mr. Smith. I had left Santo Domingo in the afternoon, and now it was sunset. There were no roadblocks in those days in the Dominican Republic, and all was peace. There was no militia junta. The American Marines had not yet landed. For half the distance I followed a wide highway where cars went by me at 100 miles an hour. The sense of peace was very real after the violence of Haiti, which seemed more than a few kilometers away. Nobody stopped me to examine my papers. I came to a gate in the fence which was locked. A Negro in a steel helmet and blue dungarees asked my business from the other side of the wire. I told him I had come to see Mr. Schuyler Wilson. "Let me see your pass," he demanded, and I felt as though I were back where I had come from. He expects me. The Negro went to a hut, and I saw him telephoning. I had almost forgotten that telephones worked. Then he opened the gate and gave me a badge, which he said I was to wear so long as I was on a mining estate. I could drive as far as the next barrier. I drove a good many miles beside the flat blue Caribbean Sea. I passed a small landing ground with a wind stocking blowing towards Haiti, and then a harbour empty of boats. The red bauxite dust lay everywhere. I came to another barrier closing the road, and another Negro in a tin hat. He examined my badge and took my name again, and my business, and telephoned. Then he told me to wait where I was. Someone would come for me. I waited 10 minutes. "Is this the Pentagon?" I asked him, "or the headquarters of the CIA?" He wouldn't speak to me. He probably had orders not to speak. I was glad he didn't carry a gun. Then a motorcycle arrived, driven by a white man in a tin helmet. He spoke practically no English, and I knew no Spanish. He indicated I was to follow his motorcycle. We drove on for a few kilometers more of red earth and blue sea before we reached the first administrative buildings, rectangular blocks of cement and glass with no one in sight. Further on was a luxurious trailer park where children played with space uniforms and space guns. Women looked out of windows over kitchen stoves, and there was a smell of cooking. At last, before a great glass building, we came to a halt. There was a flight of steps wide enough for a parliament and a terrace with lounging chairs. A large fat man with an anonymous face, shaved as smooth as marble, stood at the top. He might have been a city mayor waiting to deliver a freedom. "Mr. Brown? Mr. Schuyler Wilson?" He looked at me in a surly way. Perhaps I had pronounced his first name wrong. Perhaps he disliked my sports car. He said grudgingly, "Have a Coke," and gestured towards one of the lounging chairs. "If you could spare a whiskey," he said without enthusiasm. "I see what we can do," and watched into the great glass building, leaving me alone, and walked into the great glass building, leaving me alone. I felt I had chalked up a black mark. Perhaps only visiting directors or leading politicians got whiskey. I was only a potential catering manager seeking a job. However, he brought the whiskies, carrying a Coke in his other hand, like a reproach. Mr. Smith wrote to you about me, I said. I just stopped myself from saying the presidential candidate. Yes. Where did you two meet? He stayed at my hotel in Port-au-Prince. That's right, it was as though he were double-checking the facts to see if one of us has lied. You're a vegetarian? No, because the boys here like their steak and French fries. He drank a little of the whiskey, which was drowned in soda. Mr. Julia Wilson watched me closely, as though he begrudged me every drop. I felt more and more that the job would not come my way. What's your experience in catering? Well, I owned this hotel in Haiti until a month ago. I've worked too at a Trocadero in London, and I added the ancient lie. Fouquet's in Paris. Got any testimonials? I could hardly write my own, could I? I've been my own employer a good many years now. You're Mr. Smith's bit of a crank, isn't he? I like him. Did his wife tell you he ran for president once? On the vegetarian ticket? Mr. Schuyler Wilson laughed. It was an angry laugh without amusement, like the menace of a hidden beast. I suppose it was a form of propaganda. I don't like propaganda. We've had leaflets here pushed under the wire, trying to get at the men. We pay them well. We feed them well. What made you leave Haiti? Trouble with the authorities. I helped an Englishman to escape from Port-au-Prince. The Tonton Macoutes were after him. What's the Tonton Macoute? We were less than 300 kilometers from Port-au-Prince. It seemed strange he could ask me that. I suppose there hadn't been a story for a long time in any newspaper he read. The secret police, I said. How did you get out? His friends helped me across the border. It was a brief enough statement to cover 2 weeks of fatigue and frustration. Who do you mean his friends? The insurgents. You mean the communists? He was cross-examining me as though I had applied for a job as agent in the CIA and not as catering manager for a mining company. I lost my temper a little. I said, insurgents are not always communists until you make them so. My irritation amused Mr. Schuyler Wilson. He smiled for the first time. It was a smile of self-satisfaction, as though he had uncovered by adroit questioning something I had wanted to keep secret. You're quite an expert, he said. An expert? I mean owning your own hotel, working at that place you mentioned in Paris. I guess you wouldn't be very happy here. Just plain American cooking is all we need. He got up to show me that the interview was over. I finished my whiskey while he watched me with impatience, and then, glad to have met you, he said without shaking hands. Give up your badge at the second gate. I drove away past the private landing ground and the private port. I handed over my badge. I was reminded of the entry permit you leave with immigration at Idlewild. So that was the end of the Roman one of this last chapter. A bit more